Hi everyone, I'm Eddie. I'm a conflict management trainer, mediator, and consultant based in Montreal, Canada, and the founder of EJH Conflict Management. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about a particular scenario that I see often in my work, which is how accountability usually goes down versus how people kind of expect it to go down. Because it's actually a more complex process than people tend to think. And I'm hoping that if I can explain a little bit, it will afford people a little bit more patience and compassion, and hopefully also some confidence when trying to navigate getting accountability or obtaining accountability yourself or from someone else. So, let's just kind of set the scene here for a second. But, something has happened. Somebody has hurt you, wronged you in a particular way, whether inadvertently or advertently, right, on purpose or not on purpose, and you want them to take responsibility for their behavior. You want them to take responsibility for their actions. Very reasonable thing to want. It is often the thing that people want the most in mediation, right, is they want the person to take responsibility, own up to what they did, apologize, and more importantly than just the apology is the changed behavior, right? Making sure that this doesn't happen again. And accountability is a very important piece of conflict management, resolution, and any mediation process, right? So it's really important that we as individuals get better at actually being able to be accountable for our behavior, understanding that most harm that we cause is not on purpose. Most people are not trying to cause harm on purpose, but it happens. And I also just want to add a little caveat that this video is not talking about harm in specific instances like intimate partner violence, sexual violence, like anywhere where there are really, really dangerous patterns of behavior. I'm talking more about just that, you've had a conflict with someone or you've had ongoing issues with someone, right? And there's accountability that you want from them. But what I'm generally trying to do is get people to see that sometimes the first pass at accountability doesn't always work. So based on this scenario that we've set out, this is how people usually assume or want accountability to go down. You're going to talk to the person, you're going to tell them what they did, how it impacted you, and then they're going to say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was so messed up of me. I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to change in this way, and this way, and I'm going to work on it in this way, and this way. And what do you need from me in order to support you during this time?" That's how people kind of want it to go down, or assume that it's going to be kind of like a one-time conversation. And unfortunately, that's not really the case. And the reason for that is try to think of a time when somebody said that you hurt them. What are the odds are that you either got really defensive, kind of really combative or reactive, or just kind of shut down, right? Like felt immense feelings of shame or guilt. You felt really, really bad and you kind of just made it all about you, or you started to cry, or, it's not easy to hear that we have hurt someone, and it kind of sets off a lot of triggers for people for a variety of reasons. And this is why I tell people that accountability is usually not a one-time conversation, and that the first time that you tell somebody that they've hurt you or harmed you, you're not likely to get the response that you were maybe hoping for. And that's just because people need space and time to be able to reflect on what you told them. Often the first conversation that I have with clients when I'm doing mediation, when we read our opening statements, is really that. It's to set out the scene, to tell the person what happened and how their behavior impacted you. And in that meeting, I'm not asking for people to necessarily take responsibility, because a lot of the time they're not ready, right? It brings up a lot of emotions especially if there's conflict on both sides, right? Where they're also upset at you for doing a certain behavior. It's going to bring up a lot of emotion, and people are going to need time and space to be able to think about what it is you said and what you're asking of them. And honestly, time and space, I always say in conflict, is like your best friend. If things are not super, super urgent, right? And there's a difference between a feeling of urgency and something actually being urgent, then take time. Give people time and space to reflect on what you said and how their behavior impacted you. It makes such a world of difference. So if people ask for space and time to do any self-reflection, I honestly really encourage you to offer them that space. They might want to talk to friends, family. They might want to talk to a therapist. They might want to just like work out those defensive feelings, right? So I really often recommend that the first time you have that conversation, it's really just to let them know and to ask them to kind of think about it and reflect on it, and then set up another time to talk about their reflection. I know this can be frustrating. We really just want that accountability piece because that's what gives us closure. It's what gives us a sense of relief. It what makes us feel more secure in the relationship. But if people are triggered, right, if they're activated, if they're distressed or shutting down, they're not going to give you authentic accountability, right? A lot of the time then we get well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Or people take responsibility for things when they're shutting down and then they don't even remember that they did it because they were so triggered, right? That's not authentic accountability. That's not actually going to help your relationship in the long run. So I really suggest that the first time you have that conversation, you're really just sharing about the experience and then asking that person to do some reflection. And I offer examples of reflection questions that you can use in my e-course on the intentional conflict practice. So you'll be able to use those as examples for when you're having those conversations. And then the next time around, when the person has kind of come back to their baseline, they're not activated, they're not triggered, they were able to do the reflection, then that's a really great time to start thinking about, okay, what did you reflect on? How did it make you feel? What are you thinking of as the next steps? And that's kind of when you start building that accountability piece. And accountability can look many ways. It's not always just an apology. A lot of the time people are really stuck on the apology. They want the apology because, again, it provides that sense of closure. But also accountability can look like I'm going to be speaking with my friends, therapists. I'm going to get help for a particular behavior, right? Anger management, for example, or communication, taking a communication course, but also even just acknowledgement that the behavior occurred is a form of accountability, right? Even somebody just acknowledging that, yes, I did that. But sometimes it takes people a while to be able to get to the apology piece. And also sometimes you're not going to get it at all. Like people might be able to be like, yeah, I did that. And they're just feeling too much shame and guilt about their behavior to access that ability to give an apology in that moment. But it doesn't mean that you're never going to get the apology ever. I've definitely had situations where the apology came quite a bit later. But that patience that we exercise when we model this type of behavior is really, really important to other people because conflicts don't often resolve themselves right away. People need to get comfortable just kind of sitting and living through a conflict as it evolves because it is always evolving. And it's not always the most uncomfortable. We kind of go through waves of discomfort, but there are times when someone is working through accountability and you're still in relationship with them. And again, remember, I'm not talking about really serious violence here. I'm not talking about things like abuse, sexual violence. Like that's not what I'm talking about here. But if we're having just like disputes with colleagues, friends, family, you kind of modeling and exercising patience and giving people space is really good because it tells them that they're allowed to kind of do that. They're allowed to do their own growth work and self-reflection work and that they can apologize, a little bit later or come to realize that they've wronged you a little bit later, and that they don't need that stress of figuring out everything now, right? Some of us take more time to process, and that's actually quite normal. Obviously, you never have to stay in relationships where you're not ever getting accountability. That's kind of a different problem in and of itself. If someone is never able to take responsibility and never able to, own up to their behavior, that's a bigger problem. But a lot of the time, this process of really just like letting people like learn and self-reflect, and then come back and have that conversation on accountability later is really helpful. And sometimes it's not going to be just one conversation. Sometimes it's going to be multiple conversations, but really you're giving both of you a chance to really work through a lot of the things that you're feeling, because also when we're activated, if we've been harmed, we might want and ask for things in terms of accountability that are not actually always reasonable. And sometimes we also need space to be able to kind of come down from the experience, self-reflect, see how the person is responding to our request for accountability. And then sometimes those needs that we have shift. So it's also nice to give yourself that space to really evaluate if what you're asking for is what you want. Anyway, all this information will be available in my course on the intentional conflict practice. So feel free to ask me more questions. And if you liked this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. And I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. Have a great day.